Hello, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. We wish you an enjoyable listening experience. Today, we will be discussing a book titled Dark Money, with the subtitle, The Hidden History of the Billionaires Behind the Rise of the Radical Right. The author is the renowned American investigative journalist, Jane Mayer, who is known for her work as a staff writer for the New Yorker magazine and as a former White House correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Mayer spent nearly a decade closely tracking the actions of Charles and David Koch, the actual controllers of Koch Industries, the second-largest privately held company in the United States. Through extensive research, she exposed their covert operations and provided a comprehensive account of how the Koch brothers shifted their political ideology from the fringes to the center of American political life. Mayer's reporting on the Koch brothers earned her accolades, including the National Magazine Award, an honor comparable to the Pulitzer Prize. In Dark Money, Mayer delves into the concept of dark money, referring to massive amounts of undisclosed funds used for illicit involvement in American political activities. Under current U.S. law, individual campaign contributions to political parties are capped at $200, with full disclosure requirements. However, the Koch brothers exploited regulatory loopholes and various covert channels to funnel billions of dollars into political activities. Mayer refers to these undisclosed funds exceeding donation limits as dark money. So, why did the Koch brothers invest heavily in dark money and political intervention? There are two main reasons. Firstly, the Koch brothers are among the wealthiest individuals in the United States, with their industries generating a staggering $115 billion in revenue in 2017. Any government policies that increased taxes or strengthened environmental regulations would significantly impact their vast business interests. Secondly, the Koch brothers were influenced by their father's teachings, which emphasized that excessive government intervention in society could lead to trouble. They also adopted the laissez-faire philosophy of Austrian economist Friedrich Hayek, believing that government regulation inevitably leads to economic downturns and a path toward tyranny. With these interests and beliefs driving them, the Koch brothers established a multi-layered network of organizations akin to an octopus. At the heart of this octopus were the various foundations, think tanks, and academic institutions funded by the Koches, which provided the intellectual foundation for their ideology. Surrounding this core were the tentacles, including Koch-funded foundations, lobbying organizations, polling firms, and media conglomerates. The Koch octopus extended its influence by captivating a group of billionaire supporters who were enamored with the Koch brothers' strategic vision and efficient political tactics. These wealthy supporters generously funded political candidates endorsed by the Koch brothers, making them a crucial link between the American political and industrial spheres. The sources quoted by the author indicate that for every $4 in political donations in the United States, $1 is associated with the Koch brothers. In the following sections, we will break down the organizational structure of the Koch octopus, the methods employed by the Koch brothers in using dark money for political influence, and the detrimental impact of dark money on the American democratic system, all as discussed in the book Dark Money. Let's start by discussing the organizational structure of the Koch octopus. As of 2016, this network employed 1,600 individuals spread across 35 states in the United States, covering 80% of the population. The wages paid by the Koch brothers to these employees exceeded the total compensation expenditure of the Republican National Committee. The Koch octopus employs three sets of tentacles for political influence. 1. The first set of tentacles involves using money to establish academic funding projects at universities and research institutions. Various research centers, reading groups, and think tanks are part of this network. Prominent think tanks under the control of the Koch brothers include the Cato Institute, the Hoover Institution at Stanford University, and the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. The Koch brothers sponsor these organizations, and the funds they provide are tax-deductible. However, these entities are not directly involved in campaign-related activities. Instead, they focus on producing research papers, press releases, and op-eds to provide intellectual products to society. 2. The second set of tentacles comprises various foundations, falling into two categories. The first category includes foundations that can openly participate in campaigns, such as the Koch Political Action Committee, PAC. The second category consists of charitable foundations with diverse names, operating under the guise of philanthropy. Most of the dark money witnessed by the Koch brothers flows into these charitable foundations, aiming to achieve tax avoidance and regulatory circumvention. The names of these second-category foundations often sound appealing and unrelated to self-interest, like Americans for Prosperity, Americans for Prosperity Foundation, Center to Protect Patient Rights, and the American Innovation Association. Some foundations have more cryptic names, such as TC4 Trust. The Koch brothers channeled the dark money they received from the industrial sector through these second-category foundations, indirectly influencing elections while legally evading taxes. For instance, the Center to Protect Patient Rights did not appear to spend a single dollar on campaign advertisements or directly contribute any money to the Republican National Committee. Nevertheless, during the 2012 midterm elections, it funneled $103 million to other foundations, indirectly intervening in elections while simultaneously enjoying legal tax benefits. 3. The third set of tentacles includes various grassroots organizations, with a notable representative called Americans for Prosperity. The Koch brothers worked to portray Americans for Prosperity as a nonpartisan, spontaneously emerging grassroots organization. However, investigative efforts revealed that every street activity organized by Americans for Prosperity had financial support from the Koch octopus to cover transportation and logistical expenses. The Koch octopus also used financial support to assimilate 17 conservative grassroots organizations into its network. These organizations targeted various demographics, including Hispanic voters, Libre Initiative, women voters, American Women's Alliance, and millennials, Generation Opportunity, with initiatives such as Real Voter to promote increased civic participation. The author notes that the Koch brothers have effectively created their own private political party. However, the true power of the Koch octopus lies in its peripheral influence. As major producers of American libertarian thought, the Koch octopus attracted a significant number of like-minded billionaire supporters who financially backed the Koch brothers' political interventions. During presidential and midterm election years, the Koch brothers' fundraising summits in Florida became the epicenter of American political life. In the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, the Koch brothers managed to secure donations from 32 prominent donors, including figures like Charles Schwab, chairman of Amway Richard DeVos, coal magnate Joe Kraft, the Robertson family of oil industry fame, and even Las Vegas casino magnates. The tremendous fundraising capacity of the Koch octopus left Republican politicians in need of campaign funds with little choice. During the 2016 presidential election, establishment Republican politicians made visits to Charles Koch's California mansion for private discussions. President Trump even tweeted a jesting remark about them: "I wish good luck to all of the Republican candidates that traveled to California to beg for money etc. from the Koch brothers." Puppets. That concludes our overview of the Koch octopus's basic structure. Now, let's delve into how the Koch brothers have used their vast wealth to intervene in American political life. The first category of tactics employed by the Koch brothers involved shaping libertarian ideology and reshaping the political correctness norms in American society. The extensive and layered tentacles of the Koch octopus reach various facets of American society, with a primary focus on American academia. Influence on higher education. The Koch Foundation influences American society by funding research projects, establishing new disciplines, and guiding the study behaviors of university students. They have purposefully set up research centers and think tanks, reversing public suspicion and vigilance towards industrial tycoons that arose during the Progressive Era in the early 20th century. The Progressive Era was marked by a political movement that sought power equality against monopolistic capitalists. The Koch brothers created a new political correctness, asserting that only a laissez-faire, limited government could lead America to prosperity. Their ability to expand Koch Industries' assets from hundreds of millions to hundreds of billions of dollars can be attributed, to a large extent, to their reshaping of America's political correctness norms. Under their influence, public trust in private enterprises surpassed trust in the government. During the 1960s and 1970s, when the Koch brothers inherited their wealth and began managing their business, American businesses faced significant pressure. In 1962, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring was published, exposing the deadly effects of DDT pesticide abuse on the environment, sowing the seeds of the environmental and consumer rights movements. In the subsequent years, Congress passed numerous acts such as the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, and the Nixon administration established the Environmental Protection Agency, prioritizing public interests over corporate costs. The United States shifted from a laissez-faire nation to a regulatory one. Koch Industries also faced lawsuits and fines for causing public harm through pollution. At times, the Koch brothers were overwhelmed and preoccupied with dealing with these legal challenges. With the assistance of their strategists, they realized that the true enemies of their business could be found within university classrooms, media outlets, and research institutions. These enemies were left-leaning intellectuals advocating power equality and asserting that businesses must bear the consequences of their environmental pollution. Rather than dealing with legal battles in court, the Koch brothers decided to become creators of a new ideology. They aimed to influence the minds of Americans from the source. They donated $30 million to George Mason University in Virginia, inviting Austrian schoolmasters advocating free market economic models to the United States. This led to the establishment of the Mercatus Center for Economic Studies. Subsequently, this think tank, along with another Koch-affiliated think tank called the Cato Institute, became the manufacturing base for a series of tax cut policies during the Reagan and George W. Bush administrations. The Koch brothers recognized the importance of shaping ideology from a young age. For instance, in research projects funded by the Koch Foundation, university students' papers needed to pass a computerized search. If the keywords of key figures in libertarian economics, such as Hayek, Milton Friedman, or Friedrich von Hayek, appeared a sufficient number of times, the paper would be awarded an excellent rating in a scholarship. The Koch brothers also sponsored Ivy League schools like Brown University, where they designed a course specifically for incoming freshmen, focusing on libertarian market economics. This course instilled a preconceived belief in young individuals who were just beginning their academic careers. To push libertarianism into the mainstream, as of 2015, Koch-affiliated foundations had sponsored the establishment of research projects in 307 higher education institutions, indirectly funded 800 professors, and, in contradiction to the tradition of academic independence, demanded narrative control over their funded projects. The majority of these projects focused on researching tax reduction, challenging environmentalism, consumer rights, and civil rights movements. Influence on mass media. Another battleground for the Koch brothers' influence in the ideological domain is mass media. They invested in media outlets to influence their editorial policies and insert right-wing intellectuals into mainstream publications like the New York Times as commentators and columnists. Their long-term investments in mass media allowed them to effectively use media to pressure the government and influence policy. For instance, during the Obama administration, a donor received substantial subsidies for new energy from the government. The Koch octopus seized this scandal, investing $2.4 million in broadcasting advertisements that continually magnified the event's impact. This ultimately forced Congress to reduce subsidies for new energy. The final step in reshaping political correctness was achieved through grassroots movements to communicate libertarian ideals to the public. Grassroots movements. Charles Koch once said in a 1999 speech that great ideas are worthless if they are confined to ivory towers. The Koch octopus took these ideas from behind the scenes and brought them to the streets, seeking public support. The Tea Party movement is a prime example. During both of President Obama's terms, Tea Party protests frequently erupted in major American cities. Protesters, inspired by the Boston Tea Party's defiance of colonial rule and taxation without representation, took to the streets, demanding the government to end new energy subsidies, obstruct the passage of the Affordable Care Act, reduce federal spending, and implement substantial tax cuts. The author reveals that these so-called grassroots street movements were not spontaneous civilian actions. Most were artificial grassroots movements sponsored by the Koch brothers' checks, complete with organized and paid participants. Nearly every Tea Party rally had large sums of Koch money behind it, providing transportation and logistical services. The Koch octopus had well-defined roles. Their Heritage Foundation and the Cato Institute were responsible for providing talking points and press releases. Americans for Prosperity hired speakers and organized the masses, while Citizens for a Sound Economy, the precursor of Americans for Prosperity, was responsible for paying participants. According to a New York Times investigation, the Tea Party movement, at its peak, garnered support from 18% of Americans. However, its core membership consisted of only 330,000 people registered with the 6 national organizations. This suggests the second category of tactics employed by the Koch octopus involves intervening in industrial policy to evade regulation and profit for their businesses. The author believes that all of the activities conducted by the Koch brothers under the guise of charity have one underlying goal: to enhance the profits of Koch Industries. According to the author, the Koch brothers' success is not praiseworthy because their method of earning money differs from individuals like Bill Gates, who generate income through genius and innovation. Instead, the Koch brothers profit by breaking rules. One of the most significant operations conducted by the Koch brothers in intervening in industrial policy was their forceful reversal of America's carbon emissions policy. Koch Industries had learned a harsh lesson from its environmental history. In 2000, the company was fined $30 million by the U.S. Department of Justice for oil spills near shorelines, violating the Clean Water Act. In the early 21st century, with Democratic candidate Al Gore leading the American environmental movement, the focus shifted to addressing global warming and limiting carbon dioxide emissions. As the second-largest privately owned industrial conglomerate in the United States, Koch Industries owned refineries, coal mines, power plants, fertilizer factories, and oil and salt mines. Collectively, these operations emitted 300 million tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere each year. If carbon emission taxation policies were enacted, Koch Industries would face dire consequences. The election of Barack Obama only heightened this crisis. During a celebration event upon receiving the Democratic Party's nomination, Obama vowed to reverse the government's inaction on environmental crises. He claimed that, once in office, he would slow the rise of sea levels and usher in a time of planetary healing. True to his word, one of the first bills he proposed after taking office was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which supported the renewable energy industry. Additionally, he was working on the Carbon Pollution Reduction and Trading Act. The Koch octopus used three tactics to turn the tide in their favor. Portraying environmentalism as detrimental to prosperity. The first tactic was to depict environmental protection as being at odds with economic prosperity. They propagated the idea that carbon emissions restrictions were equivalent to unemployment. Through various think tank reports and mass media repetition, they drove home the message that reducing carbon emissions would lead to higher taxes, unemployment, and limitations on outdoor activities and travel. Discrediting climate scientists and promoting doubt. The second tactic involved discrediting climate scientists and peddling skepticism to convince voters that there was no consensus on global climate change trends within the scientific community. They sought to create the perception that the scientific consensus on global warming was not definitive and that hasty decisions should not be made. They even claimed that global warming was the biggest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people. In November 2009, during the Copenhagen Climate Conference, a hacker breached the internal network of the University of East Anglia, exposing some climate scientists' involvement in manipulating data to support the global warming narrative. The Koch octopus-affiliated organization, Americans for Prosperity, celebrated this revelation as a turning point, signaling a decisive victory in the climate science debate. Influencing scientific research with money. The third tactic involved flooding the field of climate science with money to disrupt academic neutrality and to unify the discourse. The Koch octopus mobilized substantial funds to enter the field of climate science, prompting various research institutions to adopt a uniform narrative that denied the reality of global warming. Between 2005 and 2008 alone, the Koch brothers launched an operation through 140 conservative foundations, directing $558 million to 91 think tanks, advocacy groups, industry associations, academic projects, legal research initiatives, and more, supporting a total of 5,299 projects. This completely shifted the balance of power in the climate science community, transforming global warming from a scholarly consensus back into a subject of doubt. Under the bombardment of media messages, the number of Americans who believed in global warming plummeted by 14 percentage points in 2008. Nearly half of the respondents thought that concerns about global warming were exaggerated. Despite serving 2 terms, President Obama failed to convince Congress to enact legislation limiting carbon emissions. The leader of the carbon emission restriction movement, Al Gore, lamented in an interview with The New Yorker that the influence of business interest groups was too immense. Under the current political system, without the approval of these interest groups, any major reform would remain a pipe dream. The third category of tactics employed by the Koch octopus in their political machinations involved direct intervention in presidential, congressional, and state-level elections to alter the political landscape of the United States. The Koch brothers openly stated that the White House, the presidency, was their target for acquisition. In their bid to oust President Obama, who supported carbon emissions restrictions and renewable energy, the Koch brothers selected Republican candidates such as Congressman Paul Ryan, Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Although they did not succeed in 2012, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, whom Charles Koch had his eye on, eventually entered the White House in 2016 as Donald Trump's running mate. Even in the face of defeat in presidential elections, the Koch brothers were not inclined to give up. They placed great importance on utilizing the United States system of checks and balances, intervening in Congress and the Supreme Court to balance the executive branch's power. After the failure of the 2008 elections, the Koch brothers launched the ambitious Red Map initiative, aiming to funnel more dark money into state-level elections. They aimed to turn traditionally Democratic-controlled states and swing states into Republican strongholds. In the 2010 midterm elections, the Republican Party gained 63 seats in the House of Representatives and took control of legislative bodies and governorships in 21 states, thanks in part to the Red Map initiative. This not only caused the Democrats to lose their majority in both houses of Congress but also led to the Affordable Care Act being unable to pass the Senate and being subjected to various restrictions when implemented at the state level, rendering it ultimately ineffective. Dark money could make politicians feel indebted to their donors and, according to the wishes of the Koch brothers, change their political stances. This was the ultimate goal of the Koch octopus's funding of elections. In the 2012 presidential election, Republican candidate Mitt Romney, originally a staunch environmentalist, changed his stance after private meetings with various donors, including David Koch at his seaside mansion. He publicly stated, "My view is that we don't know what's causing climate change." Numerous examples of such shifts in candidates' positions exist. In conclusion, we have outlined the three categories of tactics employed by the Koch brothers to intervene in American politics using dark money: the production of a free market ideology, reshaping political correctness, influencing industrial policies, evading national regulations, intervening in elections at all levels, and altering the political landscape of the United States. In the third part, we'll briefly discuss the harm inflicted by the Koch brothers' manipulation of dark money on American democratic politics. In the author's view, dark money first undermines the democratic ideal of one person, one vote, and equality for all. With the advent of modern mass media, wealthy individuals can manufacture content and purchase airtime to amplify their voices, thus influencing the judgment of others. This places democracy in an awkward position where it can be bought by the highest bidder. Secondly, uncontrolled and undisclosed dark money has had a significant impact on the core of the American democratic system, the electoral process. On January 21, 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court, in the Citizens United case, overturned limits on political donations by corporations and labor unions. Subsequently, the Supreme Court also lifted limits on individual contributions. This means that billionaires can donate unlimited funds to support a particular political candidate for the presidency, Congress, or governorship. In the inherent political concept of the United States, political campaign funding is meant to support a party's and politicians' governing ideas, not to be directly used for political quid pro quo. Since the progressive movement, U.S. election laws have required the disclosure of the sources and destinations of political funding for media and public oversight to prevent politicians from directly repaying their backers. However, under the new tax laws implemented by the Bush administration, the charitable foundations initiated by tycoons can enjoy tax exemptions as long as no more than 50% of the funds directly support election-related expenses. This has enabled the Koch octopus to obfuscate the origins and destinations of political money by transferring funds between layers of foundations to achieve tax avoidance, making it difficult for the public to see where dark money flows. In this section, we've outlined the damage dark money has caused to the American democratic system from two angles: the principles of democratic politics based on one person, one vote, and the electoral process. Finally, we'll briefly discuss two extended thoughts from this book. One is the issue of the relationship between interest groups and the government in the American political system. We shouldn't view the Koch brothers as unforgivable conspirators or ambitious individuals just because of the author's perspective. Intervention in politics by industrial capitalists as an interest group is both legal and inevitable. The author also mentioned in the book that while criticizing Republican benefactors, Obama simultaneously courted his own circle of wealthy donors, setting a new record for the number of times a sitting president attended fundraising events. At fundraising events attended by billionaires like Bill Gates, Obama openly stated, "There are 5 or 6 people in this room tonight who could make a decision that would solve a critical problem for the country." The second extended thought is that the Koch brothers can create their own voices but do not have the power to suppress or delete opposing voices. In early 2011, Koch's donors gathered at the Palm Springs estate for a summit. Protesters gathered outside, including the environmental group Greenpeace, which flew a 135-foot-long fluorescent green blimp with portraits of the Koch brothers and the words, "Koch kills," over Koch's resort. Riot police blocked off the resort, and protesters waved protest signs. This incident illustrates that in a marketplace of ideas, the Koch brothers cannot monopolize and deceive all voters. They never succeeded in buying the highest office in the White House. In the 2016 election, the Koch brothers raised $889 million to support the Republican establishment, but the political figures they supported were defeated by Donald Trump in the Republican primaries. After winning the primaries, Trump pledged to drain the swamp from which dark money originates. The future relationship between the flow of dark money and American politics will require ongoing observation. Alright, this concludes the discussion of the book Dark Money. Congratulations on finishing another book, and thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom with practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.